Hello and welcome to day 25 of 365 days to racial change. My name is Tomlins Nyback, and I appreciate you sticking with me here at day 25. Once the month uh, finishes off and the numbers start getting jumbled up, I might get all mixed up, and I'm determined to give us one daily taste of revealing and understanding Black life in America, white life in America, power structures, economics, roots of dysfunction, maybe even talk about the future a little bit here and there. We'll get into attitudes, behaviors, thought processes, and everything. I'm just going to get right into it. Of course, I want to give homage to the man. I guess he's become a kind of mentor to me, although I don't know him personally. Know of him through a mutual friend of ours. His name is Dr. Claude Anderson, and he's actually the person much more equipped and educated and understands this material much more than me. And to prove it, he's written a bunch of books. I've got that on my to-do list. Get around to writing some serious work one of these days. First is Dr. Claude Anderson's, and this is the order I read them in. These three works. He's written more than three. A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. Oh, very eye-opening book. And once I started watching his videos and reading his work, I've just never been able to look back. My life's been transformed as a Black man in America. Black Labor, White Wealth. We are continuing a short series out of this book. And search for economic power, justice, things like that. And Dr. Anderson's Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. Excellent book. I just finished up that, and we'll be looking at, some practical things that blacks as a community can perform as we come up out of the ashes. And I think there's a lot of stuff probably needs to happen before we can be a super big unified thing. We need power. We need to come together as a community, and we need numbers too. But all that aside, that's another thing. We'll get into that as the year progresses. Also, we'll be looking at Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. This is from the mid-1800s. Harriet Beecher Stowe is a white female abolitionist, and that's a fictional account of slave life, master life, being sold, bought, used, abused, and whatnot. Also, look behind me here, and you'll see the hashtag #US2 symbol there, and you can type that in your browser or in your Facebook. That'll take you to community, get you connected if you'd like. There's a bunch of other Black communities as well that you can interact with and find your way, be a part of. I'm still going through a lot of changes, and I'm still really absorbing this information. I'm into this project here and, life stuff. So I'm not as active in any Black community, but I've been reaching out in my own little ways. And this little project keeps me busy enough. Okay. So to get right to it, we've been talking about the appendix of Black Labor, White Wealth, Dr. Claude Anderson's work. And he has this set, there's just a page, about 7 pages, of laws in chronological order that were enacted in various states and years and things like that to just further marginalize and abuse, disenfranchise slaves and black people in general. And my thought, my philosophy towards this 7 days or so is to see how these laws impact, we'll see the roots of these laws, okay, in slavery America, but then do those laws as black slave thinking and white entitlement prevailed even into the 21st century. We started in the 1600s through this block of Southern laws. Towards the end of the series, we'll begin again at the 1600s in the block of Northern laws and talk about those things. But what we're getting at is, are black people still under an oppression, so to speak? Are white people, do they still feel entitled? And is their privilege passed on from generation to generation? Like, not just because they circulate the stuff and the wealth, but I mean, the mindset. Is it continuing? Does it go on? And I'm trying to tease out some answers. I want you to think more objectively, critically about these things. Because I think if we unpack and look at anything like this honestly, then we can start making some real change. Then we've hit our ground, our bottom, and we can lay a foundation to rise up, because now we have our purpose in place, and we know where we're coming from. We're not just uptight and uppity. We're thinking logically about where we're coming from and what adjustments we need to make. In my case, I'm making an argument for the mental disposition of all people, and can the roots of that mental disposition come along, last for hundreds of years? All right, so let's get right to it. This is page 225. This is the third set of Southern laws, standards, and restrictions, mainly in the southern states. Now, you're going to find as we get to the northern states, some of the states are repeated. I'm not sure what Dr. Anderson had in mind with that. We're not going to care about where the states appear in the book on the list. Again, this is just a flyby. I'm going to camp on 2 or 3 of these laws, tease out some things in this brief segment, and then just keep rolling along. Okay, so here we go. This is going to be 1820 to 1833. Okay, South Carolina, 1820, South Carolina migration law prohibited free blacks from entering the state. We've run into that a few times now. Louisiana, I think, and Virginia had similar laws. 1826, North Carolina migration law. So there just have these states following suit, taking note, and okay, what's going on in Maryland, what's going on in Alabama, and all this Kentucky and things like that, and so they're following suit. Now, North Carolina at this time, they added a $500 fine, and this is a precursor to a Jim Crow semi-slavery that comes along after emancipation, and that Jim Crow semi-slavery is just more oppression and disenfranchisement of blacks, where blacks are being arrested and giving incredible prison sentences, and they're on road gangs and work gangs. We've seen movies of huge collections of black men wearing white and black striped uniforms doing some road work. I read Dr. Anderson's work, I think it was in Black History Reader, where sometimes in the evenings there'd be long trains of these work gangs moving along. And these were black men, accused of some trumped up crime and just put to work and put to use. And again, it's more unpaid labor coming out of the black community is what happened. So, this $500 fine, no doubt the black person probably didn't have $500 on them. I don't know what $500 looks like back in 1826, but that's got to be a whole lot of money. Wow. So you're probably looking at some prison time for not having that money. And even today, I was talking to another black man a few years ago, and he said, if you don't have enough money, well, he was told that if he didn't have enough money to bail himself out of prison in a situation, then he was still a slave. It didn't register, didn't have as much impact back then, but I kind of see the idea of it now. 1827 Florida voting law restricted voting to whites. So, and then interesting, you had these black communities. And the thing is, so here's the passivity of the black community. Here's the volition and again, the privilege, the entitlement practiced by the white community. No doubt the blacks are segregated somewhere off on the edge of the county or the town or whatever, because they need to be in close enough proximity to do labor. Yet here's this white powerful collection making these laws. So the blacks can't vote or have a say and all that, of course, but the blacks fall into this passive state through this inactivity, through not being able to participate. And whites continue to just go on and have their government over land. So, it's good we finally we've broken that up a little bit. We've had our thing in the 60s to say, no, the people in the community, now we've gotten away from it since, where we've reverted back, blacks are falling asleep again. We just have to revamp this whole voting thing. But the point is, here we are again, 21st century, where there's still, Dr. Anderson talks about this consistently too, where white, powerful through money or influence can be remotely somewhere and still dictate through politics policy on some other remote area that they don't even live in or have. Their interest is to control and exacting resources, but they're not physically in the space, right? It'd be like, again, here we go with the King of England, back in the towards 1775, 1776, and the colonies are breaking away and having a July 4th celebration and all that. It's the same thing over and over, and the white colonists broke away, but then practiced the same thing that they hated, that they broke away from. Okay, now, I'm going to say that's probably human nature, except the whites just had more power to exercise it. Okay, 1829 Georgia literacy law provided a fine, imprisonment for teaching black people to read. We know what certain kinds of education will do. Education has blown my mind, so here I am for this whole year just trying to voice my opinions. But now education is not necessarily the answer um, to economic justice and things like that. But there is a point where education, they didn't want black people to become uncomfortable, to start thinking critically about their environment, and to understand how they were situated in white America. So you don't want them reading. 1830 Louisiana expulsion law required all free blacks to leave the state within 60 days. Something got them ticked off. And that's another thing, you look at history. My history in elementary school and all that was like white fireworks. I think I'll start using that term, because you have this explosion. You have the Wright brothers and Edison and Benjamin Franklin, and these explosive moments in history and stuff. And it's like white people are doing this magic, and every couple years, but it's supported through black labor and, of course, appropriation of Indian Native American land. you know, but the white people, their history is, they make it so complete. This happened, then this happened, and this happened. Like it's just this mountaintop of growth. Uh, Henry Ford and stuff. And um, what's some other big things? Oh, the nuclear bomb. But the point is, this race of people really props themselves up as um, really being so wise and in control, which they are, but it's through so many divisive and questionable means and motives. Um, now that I've been introduced to Dr. Anderson's work, my eyes are open. It's like, where did they get the resources? Why do they have all the land? Okay, well, they made all these laws. They prevented black people from having uh, land in general. They didn't want black people to participate in the wealth and resources of this nation. Where they did not participate in the gold rush or any other valuable resource rush in the United States. Okay, so this expulsion, here's expulsion. Now they're going to upheaval and more upheaval, move them around, sell them off, move them around, change their family, meritorious manumission. Do you get the idea? We blacks can sit in the 21st century and be exasperated, and we can put our hands on our hips, shake our fist because we've had the 60s and things like that. But it was much different for the slave, and does the attitude and mentality prevail to this day from whites and blacks. 1830 Mississippi employment law forbade blacks employment in printing and entertainment. Interesting, that's interesting. I should have highlighted that one. But blacks have influenced entertainment from the get-go. All those African rhythms and blues and things like that. Music wouldn't have its liveliness. Its improvisation that's a black thing. We did it naturally in Africa, and couldn't help it, just comes out. That might be one reason for this unity. We're all improvised. 1830 also, Kentucky property tax law taxed blacks, forbade their voting or attending school. So they understood the power of the vote. The power of the vote had to be probably more powerful back then than now. Up to now, maybe I got to check some information about the electoral college and things like that. But we got the candidate can win the popular vote, but the electoral college can overturn that and insert their candidate, which makes me wonder why we vote anyway. I personally don't vote, and now that I've read Dr. Anderson's work, I have a whole new thing on voting. We'll do a segment on voting and the power of it. Does it mean anything? Period. But taxed blacks, we're the black labor is still funding this white activity. They can't, in their laziness, they can't help but to find some way. Because the blacks are they're just like machinery, like washing machine. We got all our modern day. We got refrigerators and cars. We have slaves. Even black people have slaves today, but back then the slaves were human beings. That's a little different than a machine, or an animal. I even question how far we go with using animals. And we've gotten, of course, away from that with huge farm equipment and things like that. But back then, the animals were even more in demand. And so the black man is maybe either equated or maybe a touch above a common animal back then in those days. 1831 North Carolina license law required all black traders and peddlers to be licensed. I think this was more of a surveillance tactic. Who's doing what? Is this black man, this black entrepreneur, really building wealth? Where are they getting it? What's going on? So reporting into some central location for a license and all this stuff. It was probably costly. You couldn't, if the black person is maybe not well educated, not well read, then it's a problem. They don't know what they're putting their mark on. I see it as more of a surveillance. Maybe it's something where we'll talk about. Can do some more digging on that North Carolina license law. And also 1831 South Carolina, North and South, I guess, really play off each other in this time, enacted licensing prohibition. So free blacks were denied any kind of business license. South Carolina said, no, you get it all out of there. Don't even have a license. I wonder what made them so agitated. I'm guessing see, because black folks, like once we get a system in place, of course, they probably just blew up, and became very successful at whatever. You marginalize us, but then they marginalize us to a point we just, come up naturally. The power of God or something. So this licensing that was going on in North Carolina and probably got very successful, and blacks were probably just doing great things. South Carolina said, oh, no, you don't. Get that out of there, okay? And also 1831, active year there in the colonies and states. Mississippi preaching law forbade free blacks to preach except with permission. Here's another surveillance thing. Blacks didn't have church unless a white person was in attendance. And sometimes blacks the religion was monitored, and the message was always slanted towards the slaves identifying with those in poverty and privation and struggling and all that. All that they were building up their treasure in heaven, right? But now for white folks situated in religion and the Bible, they were the masters. So their privileged life was had because they were white, and also when they went to heaven, the great by and by, they were still in an elevated position. And it was kind of considered that the blacks, the slaves, would then be more on the same level with whites after they died. So that's a big part of the message. They're not black preachers. They're not empowered the group or encouraged the group at all. You're asking for lynching. You're not going to make it out of the county if you preach empowerment and unity and stuff. It's all whatever. At the end of the sermon, it was clear that this black congregation had not been liberated or empowered. They were still subservient and in the control of the white power there. 1832, Alabama and Virginia literacy laws fined flogged whites for teaching blacks to read and write. 1833, Georgia's employment law prohibited blacks from working in reading or writing jobs. So when they weren't in the presses, they didn't probably transfer information verbally that originated from text, things of that nature. Also, 1833, Georgia's literacy law, which worked together with this employment in reading or writing jobs, it provided fines and whippings for teaching blacks. Don't do that. It's interesting that some of these laws I picture as a response to something going on in their communities or the society at the time, right? They seemed like whether it was either the blacks, there was some influence penetrating the South as far as this literacy thing. It's up there with translating the Bible into English. Back there, like a Gutenberg Bible or, the King James Bible kind of broke up all of that mystique. But, you'd be burned for saying scripture in English or translating in English. You'd be threatened and putting your life in peril if you messed with the Latin Bible. Wow. Same thing here in the South. This issue with reading and black literacy and things like that. Who was teaching them and punishments and all that. So it's it's tiring, man, to think that black folks just went through some of that. And the poor white folks, to what they are so jammed up and with their privileges and so afraid and whatnot. They got to keep making up these laws and keep finding ways to oppress. It's up there with Pharaoh telling his servants, to kill off the babies from the womb, and all this stuff, and And when Moses showed up, the Pharaoh was like, "Oh, the people are uppity now. Let's take away the straw and make them still get the quota out." um, you know, so this is the third straight day of this. We'll say there's 10, 15, so that's 30. You know, between 30 and 45 laws we just talked about, and we ain't even done yet. We ain't even halfway through all the stuff that I'm just poking at here in these few days. So we still got a long way to go. Hang in there with it. We'll switch gears eventually, and we're going to dive into some of these more in depth. I'll do some more research. But thanks for hanging out for this short segment. Thank you. New subscribers. I saw my subscriber ticker went up one. So someone got touched or whatever. Um, right now, I know I have a small email list. So however you heard about me, or if you are somebody I already know, I just want to give a shout out to you. Thank you for your support. If not, put some information in the comments, and I'll eventually get around getting to that. I'm still new to this. But anyway, my name's, again, Tomlin's Nyback, and thanks for hanging out with me for this journey, 365 days towards racial change. We'll see you again soon.